I'm going to show you how to tell a great story using a 3-step framework. Every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, but we're going to create it in a different order. We're going to decide what the ending is first, and then the beginning, and then we'll finish with the middle. As creators, we want to highlight a certain thing, a moment, an epiphany, and that will always be the ending of our story. Our beginning is what draws the listener in, and the middle is what glues both of those ends together. So let me show you how this works. The first thing we want to do is think of a moment that was incredible. Maybe a highlight of last year, last week, or even today. It was a moment when everything changed. You had an epiphany, a perspective shift, or just a tender life moment. Now this is going to become the ending of our story. It's the whole reason why we're telling it in the first place. Here's the ending of a story I tell about jumping out of a military airplane. I hit the ground and I watched my parachute settle. I was okay. I could hear my fellow paratroopers moving around and shouting to each other. I realized that even if it felt like I was alone, I never had been. So that is our ending. The beginning should be as close to the opposite of our ending as we can get. We want to show a big contrast between both ends of the story. So if the ending of our story is this moment when everything came together, our beginning should show confusion. Or if it was a tender moment, we can show a moment of isolation. Here's my example. I'm in a dark, noisy room, foam stuffed in my ears, and I'm strapped into a chair made of cargo netting. I'm so nervous I can barely breathe. And even if I tried to get up and leave, I couldn't. That is our beginning. Now that we have our story's boundaries in place, it's time to show how we got from the beginning to the end. Let's break it into 3 scenes. These are little moments that led up to the big moment. We have the most latitude here in what we actually talk about, but no matter what, we always want to remember to show causality. In other words, we're telling our listeners how one thing led to another, and we're doing that by changing the picture 3 times. We're also going to use words like so now, or but then, or now it's like, to move from scene to scene. And these are the verbal cues that show causality. So remember, I'm in that noisy room, which is an airplane that I'm going to jump out of for military training. There's only one way out of this place, and it's through a little door in the back. While the plane is in the air and moving, there's no refusing either. They made that perfectly clear. It's either jump out of the door or face court-martial. So all I can do is wait and think about how in the next 20 minutes I could be dead if things don't go right. But I only actually might die. I'll get in trouble for sure if I don't jump. There really is only one way out. So we're waiting. And finally, it's time. All 32 of us stand up at once and hook our static lines up to the cable that runs from the front to the back of the cargo area. It's so hard to stand right now because my legs are shaking. I feel like I'm gonna fall over, especially with all that equipment on. But I have to stand there and wait for my doom. The minutes tick by. And eventually things start to seem okay, but I know that it's not over yet. As I'm deliberating about whether things are going to be okay or not, I'm looking in the back and there's these 2 sets of lights, a red light and a green light, and the red light is on. And I'm standing there and I know that once that green light comes on, death awaits. They're going to push me out of the plane and I'm going to fall to the earth. So I'm waiting. It's still red. Blink! The green light comes on, and it's happening. Oh, why me? Why am I doing this? I move closer to the door, and people are just disappearing out of it, man. And now it's my turn, so I give my static line off to the jump master and I jump. And everything turns dark for about a minute. Actually, it only feels like a minute. It's more like 2.5 seconds. And now suddenly I am no longer in that noisy box and I feel a heavy tug on my body and I look up and I see my parachute. And it's quiet. It turns out I'm not dead and I'm surrounded by my fellow paratroopers in the air and we're all floating to the ground. And those are the parts of our story. In my example, I used 4 visual scenes, but 3 or even 5 would work if they're a part of the story. And for extra wow, we can wrap it up with a moral, something we can say we learned from the whole journey. Here's my example. And if I just did one of the scariest things of my existence and was never alone, I know that everything else is pretty much like this. Starting a business, making a video, standing up for what's right. Yes, I'm the one who actually needs to do it, but I've always got people who are supporting me. I may not see them or be aware of them at first, but like my fellow paratroopers, they're always there and they're going through it with me. And what seems like certain death may just be my fear getting the better of me. And so that is how to tell a story, using 3 steps. We start with the awesome ending, we take the opposite of that moment and make that the beginning, and then we show how we got there. Remember to show causality as you go, and you'll keep your listeners' attention. I've recorded the full version of this story in a separate video in this playlist, in case you'd like to see it all put together. Thank you for letting me share.